Lieutenant Col Peter Dawe. I've been in the Army for 19 years. The war. So it's a profound question. It means a great deal to me. I think that we, as a civilization, are at a bit of a turning point, and it's time that we set the record straight that we will not tolerate subjugation of peoples, and nor will we clearly tolerate, I guess, someone trying to impose their will, whether that be, regardless of sort of religious affiliation or whatever the case, on our own soil and terrorize our people. And I think it's critical that we do what we do. I happen to believe in international interventionism. I think this is a classic example of that. I don't believe in the sanctity of sovereignty over fundamental human rights. And that, amongst other things, is the reason why we need to be in Afghanistan. We need to show that we are a people of resolve, of character, of principle, and that we don't back down when things get a little bit tough. That's what the war means to me.
Okay. Go ahead. Okay.
I'd first like to say, on behalf of the 3rd Battalion building in our area here on base today, I'm just going to read you the letter that Lieutenant Colonel Stogran sent to you, so that everybody can know all the support you've given us over the past few months. I'm writing at this time to express my sincere appreciation for your tremendous efforts on behalf of our soldiers and their families. As you can imagine, the tragic events of 17 April deeply touched all members of the PPCLI regimental family. What was remarkable to us was the extent to which those same events struck a chord with fellow Canadians such as yourself. The nationwide outpouring of empathy and support for our recent losses has been nothing short of outstanding, and I must say that those of us in uniform are extremely grateful. Generalities aside, however, there are those rare individuals among us whose actions truly speak louder than words. If I may say so, we are clearly one such individual. Your selfless efforts in commemorating the 3 PPCLI Group soldiers who were killed and injured in the unfortunate incident of 17 April 2002 have not gone unnoticed by those of us serving our nation both in Afghanistan and here at home. The online memorial site and books of condolence that you have created are exceedingly professional and respectful. The recent additions that you have made to the site only serve to enhance the incredibly moving experience that your personal sacrifice of time and effort has created. It is truly a first-class effort in every regard. It has come to my attention that you are also pursuing a number of additional initiatives in support of the families of our fallen soldiers. I must say that I am terribly impressed with the degree of initiative, thought, and determination that you have demonstrated by your actions today. The evident patriotism and support you have expressed in lining the streets around your home with yellow ribbons is matched only by your generous assistance in raising funds on behalf of the Patricia families affected by our recent losses. For each of those complementary efforts, I must also offer you my heartfelt thanks. I must admit that I was very surprised to hear that you have no direct connection to the Canadian Forces aside from your father's former service as an Air Force test pilot. Suffice it to say that as a result of your tremendous level of support since 17 April, your former lack of association with the Patricias has abruptly ended. Your selfless efforts have made you a valued friend, and we are eternally grateful for what you have done on behalf of 3 PPCLI Group, our families, and the regiment as a whole. Those of us in uniform don't easily forget selfless gestures such as yours. What you have recently done for us means a great deal, as rare patriots such as yourself renew our faith in what we do and why we serve. You should know that your efforts on behalf of our fallen soldiers have given everyone here in Afghanistan a tremendous morale boost. Your interest in flags has not gone unnoticed here in Afghanistan. To that end, I am pleased to be able to present you with a 3 PPCLI camp flag signed by all members of the battalion serving over here, as well as our rear party in Edmonton. Please accept the flag as a small token of our ongoing appreciation for your efforts on our behalf. I'm just going to open it up. That is yours.
Thank you very much. Acceptable.
Just going to finish this. The members of 3 PPCLI would be honored to meet you in person upon our return to Canada. We also hope to be able to introduce you to the wounded soldiers that are listed on your memorial site, as well as some of those close friends of our fallen comrades. I know that they would appreciate the opportunity to thank you in person. To that end, you should expect to hear from us shortly following our arrival back in Infantry. There will be a series of parades and associate celebrations marking the successful completion of our mission, which we'd like you to attend as an honored guest. Our Alpha Company PR is also eager to host you for a visit to the unit once we have settled in following our return. To that end, we sincerely hope that you will find time to spend a day in the life of a Patricia soldier.
Here.
Or perhaps even participate in one of our parachute drops.
Yes, I will do that.
In any case, we shall be sure to keep in touch and advise you of the details for our various upcoming events as plans develop. We sure will. I must bid you farewell for now, Joseph. The members of 3 PPCLI Battle Group have collectively mourned our losses. We must continue our focus, our energies on the tasks at hand. There is still much work still to be done over here, and we will remain busy until it is time for us to return home. In the interim, it is important for you to know that what you have done will not be forgotten. Your selfless acts on our behalf have made you a valued member of the Patricia family. We are honored to now consider you one of us. Again, thank you very much. And here's a letter that I just read from
I would like to present 3rd Battalion a little plaque that I made, and it's a poem by Neil J. MacDonald, who wrote it on the event of this, and I'd like to read it out. It's entitled, it's dedicated to the 4 soldiers killed, Sgt Marc Leger, Cpl Ainsworth Dyer, Private Ethan Smith, and Private Richard Green. And it's entitled By Their Base at Kandahar, and it's a poem by Neil J. MacDonald. The least likely demise to which a warrior might aspire has to be the death by friendly fire. Such a sudden tolling of a grievous knell emphatically proves that war is hell. Death in Afghanistan, away so far, south of their base at Kandahar. Not as glorious as Capdom Hill, but a warrior's death still. It won't be a memory as well kept as the sad saga of the raid on Dieppe. Even Biddy Ridge and Passchendaele left legends that still prevail. But, like Ortona and the Scheldt, these are wounds that must be felt. Now in our time of national grief, we must remember the red maple leaf. They wore it proudly, these PPCLI, knowing one day they too might die. And so I hope in the Warriors' Eternal Choir will lustily sing, Leger, Green, Smith, and Dye. And this is on behalf of every single Canadian citizen, and I'd like to thank you.
what we do and having a chance to watch.
Certainly. I'd like to just go and shake the hands of everyone who's come on. Thank you. So I suppose that's it.
So
I
we
believe there's
will
also
accompany you
Bill.
to our mess.
Okay. Thank you very much.
That's really nice, Joy.
This is wonderful.
This flag represents, in my mind, an important turning point in the collective consciousness of Canadians in terms of what their troops do for them on a regular basis overseas or at home. It was this whole sort of series of events was spawned by Joe Green, who I think is a very thoughtful, very kind, very generous patriot, someone who clearly loves his country, and by extension loves their troops. And so it was very important for us overseas when we caught wind of what Joe was doing for us, and then I think this flag clearly symbolizes all of it. So it's great to have it hanging in the Lions to continuously remind us that our fellow citizens care about what we do.
Yeah. I would say the most interesting element of Afghanistan in terms of consistency is Afghanistan's origins. Afghanistan was created in the 19th century as a buffer zone between the Russian and British empires. The Russians were moving south towards India, the British were moving north towards Russia, and the basic reason that they created Afghanistan was, I guess, two repercussions. The first reason was that nobody wanted to go into Afghanistan. The British were afraid, and well, the British would never say they were afraid of anything, but the British were concerned about Afghanistan, mostly the rugged terrain and the inability to quell any type of uprising. The Russians, who had always wanted a warm sea weather port, were also concerned. So basically, Afghanistan was a mistake of history. It is not and has never been a coherent so-called nation, as we would think in the case of Canada. So two problems originate. One is its terrain. The second part of Afghanistan is, in some ways, it isn't a real nation. It is a conglomeration of different tribes. And to this very day, some people would say the Taliban is less a religious movement than a tribal movement. It is not so much Islam, but the Pashtun tribes. So this is how the origination of Afghanistan. Now, of course, in our conscious memory, Afghanistan really made headlines in 1979 when the Soviet Union decided the day after Christmas that they would invade Afghanistan. Now, of course, we all know how that did not work out for the Soviet Union. In response to the invasion of Afghanistan by the Soviet Union, the United States began to fund the Mujahideen in Pakistan. And out of that funding of the Mujahideen, you had several unintended repercussions. One was, of course, the Pakistan madrasas, or religious schools. And of course, the very word Taliban is Arabic. It means students. Talib means student. Arabic, you add an AN, my 1 year of Arabic, to pluralize it. So Taliban actually means literally students. And out of those Pakistan madrasas came the Taliban movement. Now the second issue is 1988, the war with the Soviet Union is over, and the Mujahideen win. And the Mujahideen are very excited because they feel that they have brought the world, one of the world's two superpowers to defeat. The Americans, of course, had a different idea about that. So fresh off of victory, the Mujahideen are sent throughout the world with this newfound sense of victory. And many of them return home to cause various amounts of trouble. Now, of course, we picked this story up in the 1990s. We must remember two different branches. The Taliban and Al-Qaeda are usually seen as synonymous, but they are two completely different things. The Taliban is in many ways an indigenous movement that is from both Afghanistan and Pakistan, because it is part of the Pashtun tribes that find most of themselves in southern Afghanistan and parts of Pakistan. Al-Qaeda is an entity. It is a concept. In fact, the term Al-Qaeda means the base. Now, of course, we know in the 1990s, Al-Qaeda, the concept, and Taliban, the movement, come together. And of course, it is because of that and the fact that the Taliban gave Al-Qaeda a sanctuary, that Al-Qaeda was able to attack the United States on September 11th.
Suhana. Thanks, Colleen. Canadian soldiers who served in Afghanistan have given a special thank you to an Alberta man because of his webpage. Here it is coming up for you. Now, we've also got the address in case you want to check this out yourself. As you can see, it honors the 4 soldiers killed by that American bomb. The site was created by Joseph Green. He joins me now from Edmonton. Joseph, how did you come up with this idea for the website?
Well, good morning, Canada. Good morning, Suhana.
Good morning, Joseph.
Hi. I came up with this website as a mechanism to help support the soldiers of 3rd Battalion PPCLI and the Canadian people as a whole to help express themselves as a nation. And in that tragic accident that claimed 4 of our soldiers, I just felt that I had to do something on behalf of you know, the average Canadian. And I just happen to possess a skill set that allows for that to happen. And, sorry.
Now, the reaction to it, you must have been surprised because you got so many hits.
Oh my dear Lord, yes. When I launched the website, first let me give you a little bit of background here. I'm a professional multimedia web designer, and I'm based here in Edmonton. And when I first heard about the soldiers getting killed, I felt like I immediately had to do something. So I went out and I plastered all the trees on 97th Street. There was a middle boulevard there with yellow ribbons all the way between 111th Ave and 118th Ave. Then I developed this website, and then I sent it to every Liberal MP in Canada. And that's not to marginalize any other political party, because this is a Canadian issue. This is very much a Canadian issue. It's not any kind of political issue whatsoever. And I sent it out, and within the first couple days, I was just blown away by the response, because everybody just leapt onto it.
Yeah.
And it went from about 1,500 hits a day for the first 2 or 3 days. Then it was like 10,000 hits, 10,000 hits, 10,000 hits. And I'm sitting back, I'm like, whoa, all right, this is growing exponentially, and it was just phenomenal.
And what was the reaction?
So,
I have to move you along here and ask what the reaction was from the Canadian soldiers in Afghanistan when they found out what you were doing.
Well, immediately following the posting of the website, I was contacted by Major Mark Campbell in Afghanistan. And first of all, I'd like to say hello to Lieutenant Col Pat Stogran, Major Mark Campbell, Captain Doucette, and Second Lieutenant Thomas. They came back at me, and they were just blown away by the amount of work that I did, because the single book of condolence expanded into 16 books of condolences, and it was amazing. I had 85,000 hits and over 9,500 entries in the guest book alone.
Wow.
And yeah, it's phenomenal. And as a result, I don't know if you could see this, but
let's see it. Can you hold it up?
I have the flag right here, and in fact.
Now, this is a flag that you got from the Canadian soldiers in Afghanistan. What did they do?
Oh, they autographed the entire flag for me, and they flew it over their base in Kandahar. And I was just blown away, because I don't know if you could see it, but there's a little bit of Afghani dust on this flag, and I'm just honored to be the recipient of this flag. And it's just a stupendous honor. And
you know, that must have just made your heart swell, because you did this not knowing how it was going to turn out, and here you are, an honorary member of the battalion, and receiving such great accolades from the soldiers.
It was absolutely an amazing experience, and one thing that when I went there to receive the flag, I felt as though I had to give something to the battalion on behalf of all the Canadians. And there's a poem here by Neil J. MacDonald, which I printed off and I presented to the battalion, and I'd like to read it if I may. It's a poem by Neil J. MacDonald, and it's dedicated to Sgt Marc Leger, Corporal Ainsworth Dyer, Private Nathan Smith, and Private Richard Green, and it's entitled By Their Base at Kandahar. The least likely demise to which a warrior might aspire has to be the death by friendly fire. Such a sudden tolling of a grievous knell emphatically proves that war is hell. Death in Afghanistan away so far, south of their base at Kandahar. Not as glorious as Kapyong Hill, but a warrior's death still. It won't be a memory as well kept as the sad saga of the raid on Dieppe. Even Vimy Ridge and Passchendaele left legends that still prevail. But, like Ortona and the Scheldt, these are wounds that must be felt. Now in our time of national grief, we must remember the Red Maple Leaf. They wore it proudly, these PPCLI, knowing too one day they too might die. And so I hope, in the warrior's eternal choir, will Leslie sing Leger, Green, Smith, and Dyer. And
Joseph
that's a poem
Green,
by Neil J. MacDonald.
I thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on receiving the flag.
Thank you so
Good
much,
on you.
and thank you very much. And I'd like to invite everybody in Canada to come to the website, because I am going to be shutting down the Book of Condolence upon their return.
Okay.
And I will be presenting it to the battalion and the families.
Good on you. Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you so much, and it was a pleasure. Good morning, Canada.
I think the war, this war, any war, is largely unpalatable. War is an ugly business, and the reality is that Canadians, by extension Westerners, period, lead very comfortable, very insular lives, and the notion of killing and dying for a cause is foreign to most people. So I think that largely, I think there's a distaste for war, period. I don't think it's this war in particular. It's just that I think that people have a hard time accepting the loss of life that is inherent in any war. And so I think that's why this war, like any war, is largely unpopular with the people.
And killed the most significant terrorist attack in history, killing all over 2,800 people, and brought us to war in Afghanistan. Now, of course, we know what has happened over the last 8 years. For whatever particular reason, the Western community decided that the Afghan war was over. They began to focus on Iraq, and clearly many people think that was a large mistake, that the war in Afghanistan was not over. And now we have returned to Afghanistan. Now, of course, the Canadians and others were never left. We find ourselves in the present, and I guess the major point is Al-Qaeda as an idea, can an idea be defeated? Hard to say one way or another. The Taliban. People talk about the Taliban as being an Afghanistan movement or a Pakistan movement. The truth is they're both. The Taliban come from tribes on the border between Pakistan and Afghanistan. Most people in those areas do not recognize the distinction. They don't even recognize the border between Afghanistan and Pakistan. To them, that is an artificial border created by the British in the late 19th century. So when you say the Taliban goes from Pakistan to Afghanistan, they don't recognize any distinction between the two. Now, could there be a solution to this? On the one hand, I'll play devil's advocate. On the one hand, people would say Afghanistan has never been able to be conquered. It couldn't be conquered in the 19th century. The Soviet Union couldn't conquer it. We thought we had conquered it in 2001. We had not conquered it. It cannot be conquered. The best is to try to pacify this movement. The Taliban is not just some sort of foreign or alien source. It is among the people themselves, depending on the support. On the other side, I think a more accurate strategy might be to bring the Taliban into the community of nations. And of course, this might sound crazy. You can't negotiate with terrorists, but as we already know, the British and Americans have been talking to members of the Taliban. What they're trying to do is, I guess, to focus on the moderate elements of the Taliban to negotiate. But I think our strategy right now is probably the best. Most people, and I'm sure most people here in Canada, Britain, and the United States all agree that the Taliban probably cannot be defeated militarily. And it seems that Canada has taken the strategy, hearts and minds, schools, many people mentioned today, education, educating people. And I think most people would agree that is the best strategy. Educating people and also giving them a better life, giving them hope, which is something that Afghanistan has not had for a very, very long time. So I know that the strategy is about one village at a time, and trying to instill these types of making people's lives better, and of course the hearts and minds argument, making people want to be part of the community of nations. So, I mean, again, the physical elements cannot be defeated, but it's the ideas. And I'm probably not saying anything new. Most people would say we're battling hearts and minds. Give the people hope and give the people something to aspire to. Democracy, liberty, and freedom are empty terms. We've got to fill them up and show them that they are. Our way of life is not just expressed to be better, but our way of life is a better life because it gives people hope and it gives people allowing to live, grow up, and see their families succeed better than the previous generations.
I think that regardless of political leanings or views of the war, people just need to remember, and I think that they do largely. I'm very proud of our fellow countrymen and women and the way that they've embraced their troops of late. To me, this war really marked a turning point, as I've mentioned. Having been in the Army 19 years, I hadn't experienced anything like this until after our first deployment in 2002. So I think that regardless of what happens, and regardless of how our engagement in Afghanistan evolves nationally, and regardless of that debate, that political debate that needs to happen, I think that people need to continue to remind themselves that there are troops overseas doing the very best they can, having to think positive, having to focus on the mission, and needing the support of their fellow citizens. And so debate is important. Political debate, discourse is important in a functioning democracy. But we need to be aware of some of the implications of these debates. And be aware that we are fighting a very sophisticated enemy who probably watch CPAC, know exactly what's going on in the House of Commons, and know that that every death, every casualty, stirs up this whole new round of discussions, and we need to, I think, ensure that we remain aware of that, when we say what we say in public. Roger.
Well, we're not in Edmonton anymore.
Goddamn rights or not.
Well, I think what it was is a bringing together of all sorts of loose ends that were initiated back in April of 2002, April 17th, when the 4 young soldiers were killed overseas. The first 4 killed in action in Afghanistan, and my life has gone on, Joe Green's life has gone on, as well as the members of the Canadian Forces. But this brings together a huge effort on Joe's part, and it brought back my regimental family, which I've since stepped away from, and I think it's going to be very meaningful for everybody in the Canadian Forces. Well, I think the largest impact on me was the fact that an organization like the Space Center would take the interest in a symbolic gesture of this nature, and the fact that it didn't just travel up there in the cargo space, it was right up front with the astronauts, and that it was actually displayed in space. So I think that characterizes the way Canada feels about the military. For the longest time it was out of sight, out of mind, but was carrying on a legacy that was established in World War I and World War II and Korea, and in fact that legacy is living on today, and Canadians are quite proud that we do stand up and fight for peace. That was huge. It immediately brings me back to the days in our headquarters in Kandahar in the airfield. It was a completely different airfield from what it is today. It was basically wrecked buildings surrounded by trenches and tents of the troops. But in our headquarters, then Major Mark Campbell sort of brought to our attention that there's this guy, Joe Green, who'd put up all of these ribbons, and he came across the website where he was collecting, Joe was collecting names or testimonials from people who were sorry to hear about our losses there, and it was hugely compelling. And I have to say, Joe is probably was the leading edge of the pathological kind of patriotism that we're enjoying today. Canada's very proud of what we're doing in Afghanistan, and they've come to realize that when the Cold War ended, the hot war started, and our nation has fronted up to virtually all of the major conflicts that the United Nations and other entities have been involved in. So, you know, it's a huge act of patriotism on Joe's part. And having served in uniform, I think it's safe for me to say on behalf of soldiers, sailors, and Air Force personnel that it's hugely gratifying to have people like Joe taking on these initiatives.
Well, I think, you know, ideally, I'd be out of a job and we would never see any war anywhere. But realistically, and as a very proud Canadian, I hope that Canada continues to remain very engaged in international affairs. You know, what happens in Africa, what happens in Asia, what happens in Kandahar matters to Canadians. Canadians need to know that. And I think that not only do we have the capacity to do it, I think that we have the moral responsibility to do it as well. When you're a wealthy nation, as fortunate as ours, I think that you know, we have to help where we can, and it needs to be well thought out. It needs to be focused in terms of the attention that we give to various sort of hotspots. We can't be everywhere all the time, but there needs to be a method to our approach. But at the end of the day, we need to be engaged. And you know, Canada is a strong country, and we know that we can't have a voice if we don't contribute. Talk is cheap, and credibility comes at a cost. And so engagement, I think, is everything. You need to be engaged, and it doesn't mean necessarily sending troops all the time, but it means having those instruments of power, those instruments of government, to get involved to ensure that at the end of the day, people are held accountable in this world. The flag is, I think the flag is very symbolic of the love and support of our fellow citizens. You know, it was Joe Green that made all of this happen. But it goes beyond Joe Green, frankly, and I think he'd be the first one to tell you that. It's what it's done in terms of raising awareness of our troops' contribution overseas is significant. And knowing that it flew in space, and knowing that so many people were made aware of this flag and this whole venture, I think is important to the troops. They know that what they do, by looking at that flag, they are reminded constantly that what they do is important. And that's critical for a young soldier to know. When he's looking down the barrel at a 6-month deployment with 2 young kids at home, he needs to know that people care, people appreciate what he's doing. Because it ain't for the money, I can assure you that.
You got to shake Dr. MacLean's hand.
That was, what it meant to me personally was, wow. You know, okay, here I am. It's like coming into my little world here for a moment, like if you were coming in, and it's just like, here I am, I'm an artist, and I'm shaking hands with the president of the Canadian Space Agency, an astronaut who's gracious enough to take this flag that was given to me from Afghanistan into orbit. I thought it was just going into the cargo hold. I didn't know he unfurled it and actually flew it. I didn't know that. I didn't see that picture, and when I saw that, I was floored. And what it says, it just speaks to the grace and his character. And I was absolutely floored by that. And what it meant to me was just, he comes to epitomize and symbolize all that is great about Canadian public service at the highest order possible. And it was just my honor and privilege to circulate with those kind of people.
So tell me how you feel before this presentation.
Okay, let's see. I'm meeting the president of the Canadian Space Agency. I'm honored. I am floored. I am humbled. I am scared, nervous, comforted. I feel as though the complete embodiment of all my emotions are in a blender, in a perfectly spiral sort of vortex of coolness, if that makes any sense. But I tell you, it's this whole project was, you know, this whole project is about the Canadian forces and honoring the sacrifices made by our soldiers. And yeah, it's a suitable and fitting conclusion to honor the sacrifices and the lives of Canadian soldiers we lost. And you know, pound for pound, you know, Canadians are renowned for not tooting our own horns, but you know what? We're the best. We have the best military in the world, bar none. So I think, I don't know. But yeah, it's a complete jumble of emotions. Sure. So what it's like, what I'm feeling like, well, first and foremost, I'm honored, and I'm fundamentally honored that Dr. MacLean he agreed, he was so gracious to take the flag of the Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry, 3rd Battalion, into orbit, and it represents, to the best of my knowledge, the first time a Canadian Forces flag ever flew in orbit, and it doesn't get any higher than that. It just does not get any higher than that, and it's just a profound honor. And from my perspective, everything has happened in such a fast, timely order, even though it's been 7 years in the making. It just feels like a blink of an eye ago all this started. And I'm just a complete, like, I have to process my emotions at a later date because everything is just so tumultuous at this moment. But I think it's a very suitable, fitting conclusion for this as a way to commemorate the sacrifices and the loss of Canadian forces serving in Afghanistan. And you know, it's a suitable conclusion to this project. And you know, I'm sure I've annoyed members of the battalion in my persistence, but at least I saw it through to its conclusion, and that's important because it's a reflection of one's own credibility. And you know, I never thought for a moment that when I was in Edmonton and I heard about the soldiers killed and I set up the website, I also put up some 400 yellow ribbons in Edmonton. I was just like, I have to do something. And I never thought, while I was tying up the ribbons, that I was going to end up here in, you know, St. Hubert at the Canadian Space Agency with a flag that went into orbit, flew 4.9 million miles at 17,500 miles an hour. And it's just like, wow. Like, it's just a testament to that moment of that spark where you're compelled to action. And if you don't seize that opportunity to actually initiate something in the course or in the desire to do something for your country or your fellow neighbor, you know, then everything that, let it stand as a testament to what could happen when you get involved in public service or helping out, as opposed to it just being, oh, well, what could have I done, right? For me, this is an epic journey of, you know, it's a speechless journey. Like, it's rendered me, someone who I don't have a problem in talking, it's rendered me speechless because, you know, it's an overwhelming thing, you know, like, it's in this journey where I've actually came across many members of our military and our soldiers and their families, and I've experienced nothing but the highest order of professionalism and grace and class that our country has in the public service and members in the military and now the Canadian Space Agency. It's high order magnitude professionalism and grace and everything that is best about being Canadian. And you know, pound for pound, we have the best military in the world, period. And if anyone in the United States or anywhere in the world doubts that, well, I've got some friends in the JTF I'd like to introduce them to. And you know, a lot of Canadians are wallflowers when it comes to promoting or tooting our own horn. Well, I'm not. I'm here to, you know, using this opportunity to highlight that we have the best military in the world and we have the best people in the world for not only our military, but also in the Canadian Space Agency. Like Dr. MacLean is just an amazing, inspiring figure. You know, he's leading the charge in the next generation of Canadian space technology. And
in terms of this flag, you mean? Yeah. Well, certainly in 2002, like I said, we were the first mission overseas to Afghanistan, and many of us were vets of the Balkans campaigns. And so, you know, I'd certainly experienced, I think, collectively a national sort of sense of indifference towards what we did. And all of a sudden now we found ourselves at war. All of a sudden we found ourselves losing troops overseas. And by virtue of the efforts of individuals like Joe Green, we saw a real 180 nationally in terms of that national consciousness and people caring and people supporting the troops. And it was a big deal. And especially in the heat of it overseas and having to deal with the grief of having lost 4 of our brothers there, it was really quite heartwarming to know that so many people cared. Well, I suppose, you know, yeah, that's a good question. I think that on the one hand, I think it shows that clearly there's a national sort of embracing of the troops, because clearly we, by flying the flag in space, you know, we shot up to the highest priority list in terms of artifacts that we're allowed to embark on. So for that reason alone, the fact that someone would actually care enough to include it I think it was, you know, I think Dr. MacLean had 2 kilograms of artifacts that he was allowed to take onto the shuttle. And the fact that within those 2 kilograms of personal artifacts or personal effects, he would actually include a Patricia flag to us was pretty telling, I think, in terms of, you know, how people, generally speaking, care so much now about the troops. And yeah, it was a symbolic gesture, but it was an important symbolic gesture. And you know, I'm not particularly spiritual, but you know, you could certainly say there's a dimension of that as well. You know, and but to me, it was really about the fact that someone would care so much to do that, for starters, and B, that in terms of Dr. MacLean, you know, and having so little capacity to do it, would actually make it such a high priority event for himself. Pretty telling, I think. A national and international thing, absolutely. It was very much so, and it really, I think it brought the country together, and it just raised awareness across the board, and it was terrific.
How do you do, sir? I'm Joe Green. It's lovely meeting you. Wow. It's wow. It's wow.
Been a long time.
It has, and I'm just grateful for you to take the flag in orbit, and I have a little gift for you.
Okay.
And it's right here. I have a painting, but I also have a copy of my book. That the one that's destined for you is actually in the mail somewhere.
Okay.
So that was beyond my control, but I have this copy I'll present to you, and then when we find the book, you can swap.
Let me introduce General Stu Beer.
Hi, I remember you, sir. How you doing?
I'm good.
It's been a while,
Yes.
and it's wow. Well, how are you doing?
I am still serving.
Yeah.
Just not where I want to be necessarily.
Well.
It's all good.
Well, your service to Canada is very much appreciated. And where would you rather be serving?
Well, back in the field, but I got to serve in those headquarters because that needs to be done.
Well, it's very much appreciated. And wow, this is wow. Hi, Lauren. How you doing?
Good.
It's good seeing you again.
You bet. How's it going?
Oh, it's going really good. It's going really good. You look great.
Oh, thanks. I feel. You know what? I feel good.
Yeah?
I really do.
Oh, awesome.
It's all good.
I remember when I was filming at battalion headquarters, and you scared the hell out of me with just the way you were, you know, talking to the battalion is when you were issuing instructions on the parachute jump.
Yeah, okay.
And I was just like, oh. You know, there I am. I'm filming. My hands are shaking because just like you can tell, you have the wrath of God behind you. It's pretty cool. How you
Joe,
doing?
I'm Pete Dawe.
How do you do?
I'm the CO of the unit, and this is the RSM, Mr. Leger.
How do you do, sir?
Nice to meet
It's
you.
lovely.
Pleasure to
lovely
meet you.
It's a magnificent experience here.
It's
and
great to see you.
It's,
Listen, I really hope that after this we can sort of close the loop back in the battalion, perhaps at some point. You and I should talk.
Sure.
And figure out how to do this, you know, so we can
Okay.
properly recognize you in front of the battalion for all the work you've done. That kind of, okay.
Whatever you prefer, sir.
Okay, great.
It's done.
Yeah.
It's.
We'll talk, buddy. Yeah, that's
Okay.
great.
All right. Are you with the Patricias? I would. Yeah.
Well,
PPCLI.
so I'm the CO of the 3rd Battalion with.
Oh, back in Edmonton.
Yeah.
Oh, you flew out for this.
Yeah, 3 of us. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, wow.
Had to bring this guy, of course. Yeah.
Oh well, he was actually the last. You were the last person to sign the flag. You signed it at City Hall. I remember that.
Yeah.
And I'd actually like to get Dr. MacLean to sign it. And okay, well. All right. Well, good morning.
We can stand.
Whichever you prefer. You prefer to stand? Okay, I'm going to sit if that's all right.
Okay.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First, I'd like to thank Dr. MacLean and the entire Canadian Space Agency for extending an invitation to receive this flag. In 2002, I set up a website to collect the condolences of average Canadians and people worldwide for the first 4 Canadian soldiers killed in Afghanistan. I am just an average Joe who happened to live in Edmonton on a main road which soldiers from Edmonton Garrison used. When we lost the first soldiers, I could sense a vacuum which is now spread across Canada with the loss of our latest soldiers, and in that, I felt that I had to do something constructive because losing any member of our beloved military for me feels like a loss of a brother or sister, and it compelled me to do something. So the next day, I put up hundreds of yellow ribbons on 97th Street in Edmonton, and in fact, I was met with the first widow and her family of this conflict, Marc Leger, and the family of Sgt Marc Leger came out to thank me. There were simply no words to explain that profound moment, except that she is a woman of class and grace, and are all the families I've had the honor to circulate with on this epic journey, especially the Van Sloten family, relatives of Cpl Ainsworth Dyer. By this point, I had the website well underway, and within the first week, I received nearly 60,000 hits and was contacted by my now lifelong friend, Major Mark Campbell, the Deputy Commanding Officer of 3rd Battalion PPCLI Battle Group, serving in Afghanistan with a message of thanks. As an artist, it marked the first time my work was shown in a war zone, and needless to say, I was floored. After insisting on asking what it was they could do to thank me, I requested an autographed flag of their regiment, as I'm an avid flag collector. Thinking nothing of it, Major Campbell did all the legwork to facilitate that, and I simply could not believe it when he sent a group photo of the battle group posing for a picture. That moment, seeing that picture, restored my faith in humanity and made me realize the true caliber of people who serve Canada. And to Major Mark Campbell, I thank you and your family, along with the family of Colonel Wayne Eyre, for your hospitality. After reading a story on CNN.com about how there was a U.S. Marine Corps flag pulled from the rubble of the Pentagon that was taken on the space shuttle as a way to inspire the entire U.S. Armed Forces, I contacted the Canadian Space Agency, provided them with the backstory along with some pictures, and Dr. MacLean warmly accepted my offer of the flag to take into orbit as a way to inspire the Canadian Forces. When I read the email informing me of their decision, I was stunned and truly inspired by the sheer generosity of Dr. MacLean and the entire Canadian Space Agency, for they matched the same degree of high-order professionalism and grace I've experienced in dealing with the Canadian Forces. Today, I present the last copy of a book I invested 2.5 years into in order to sell and raise funds to memorialize all soldiers lost while serving in Afghanistan. The proceeds I was able to raise were donated to an organization which promotes women's rights and literacy in the Middle East based on the recommendations of my very good friend, Col Pat Stogran, the commanding officer of the 1st Battle Group, and now the Ombudsman at Veteran Affairs. At the funds presentations, which took place in my alma mater, Emily Carr University of Art and Design in Vancouver, the Patricias arranged to have a piper from the Seaforth Highlanders come out and participate to help close that chapter. What I give to you now is one of only 18 books in existence. I gave the majority of these books away to members of the family who lost loved ones, and the first 8 injured soldiers is my gesture of thanks for their sacrifices to Canada. Since that time, I have been presented with this flag. Over 100 more Canadian soldiers have died while serving in Afghanistan, and each have had the same impact on me as the first. There is no easy way to accept such a tragic loss, especially with the most recent ones just a few days ago. Unfortunately, the book destined for you is in the mail as we speak, so this is my personal copy I'm presenting, which you can hold on to until we are able to track yours down. The loss of any precious members of any service is hard, and with that, I, along with all Canadians, would like to express our deepest collective condolences to the space families on the loss of Columbia only a few short years ago. The world stood still that day, and their bravery and courage to this day serve to inspire millions around the world. To Dr. MacLean, I'd really like to specifically point something out. By virtue of you taking that flag into orbit and elevating that Canadian Forces flag of the 3rd Battalion, Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry, you took our forces somewhere they have never been before. I know that I received this flag initially for the first war we lost, but I ask that you, the Canadian Forces as a whole, and the Canadian families who are bearing the brunt of this come to view this as our flag. What you did, sir, you took the flag of our fallen soldiers, all of them. You, sir, you carried that flag which escorted the souls of our fallen soldiers home to the heavens to make sure they made it home safe. And I would just like to specifically highlight that because it is in that context which I graciously accept this flag back from you. This flag, as I have promised, will end up back here in the near future, framed up for a permanent display so that anyone in Canada may come and visit it, as it has become a sacred piece of Canadian military history. I'd like to close by saying thank you again to Dr. MacLean for this effort in bringing this to a proper and graceful conclusion for all members of the PPCLI and who serve in the Canadian Forces. I would especially like to express my deepest thanks to the regiment for putting up with my stubborn persistence. And finally, I'd like to thank the soldiers who defend Canada and the families which sacrifice for me and for this nation. Your courage and sacrifice serve to inspire me, and when you have those moments of hardship and loss, I invite you to go outside and on those hard nights, look up towards the heaven, knowing that for 11 days, 19 hours, 6 minutes, and 35 seconds, the entire earth flew under the flag of the Canadian forces and under the Patricias, under their watch, and our nation is safe because of your collective sacrifices. Thank you, and may God continue to bless Canada. Thank you. So, I have this for you, sir. So, that is for you. And I also have a little painting. Well, not little, but I have a painting for you. I'm among many other things, I'm a fine arts painter. And as a way to kind of symbolically just say thank you, not only on behalf of myself, but on the regiment and the Canadian Forces, I'd just like to give this to you as just our token of thanks. So let me just slowly take these flags off. And I also have one request. As an artist, I like to think I have some degree of license, I suppose. I would like to invite you to actually paint the last stroke because it's important to me as an artist. So, would you care to grab the other side, sir? Now this painting is called The Stuff of Patricias because he's got the stuff of Patricias. So this is actually a painting of STS-115 going up. And I hope you don't mind, but I took the liberty of getting your badges and putting them into the painting. And in fact, as a painter out in Vancouver, you know, I was really honored that your involvement in this directly contributed to my own art practice. And as a painter, I usually paint in chef's whites because I'm a very, very sloppy painter. And when I heard that, you know, that flag went up, I actually wanted to bring this to show you that this is my very first painting jacket. And this is kind of like my uniform, as it were. And so I actually put a badge of the Canadian Astronaut Office. And, you know, sometimes people say, well, what are you, a space cadet? I'm like, well, yeah. It's so I just wanted to let you know that your involvement directly influenced my life. So, sir, I'd like to, with your permission, invite you to take this brush.
You want me to paint it?
I want...
Don't mess it up.
All right. So take this. And what we'll do, we're going to drain both tubes right down in here. And then you can just mix it in, and then that's it. So by all means, spread away, sir.
So you're...
Yeah, drain the whole tube. There you go, sir.
I'm sure I'll have to pay union fees or something, right?
So just do whatever you feel.
Well, you're missing a shockwave in here.
That's fine. That's all part of the artwork.
The shockwaves are in diamond things. So.
Really?
Yeah. I don't want to make it look like I know what I'm doing here.
Wow. This, by far, at this moment, is one of the best moments of my life, especially as an artist.
My goodness. You don't have much time to work with this paint, do you?
No, it's oil. So actually, I paint so thick that realistically, it's probably going to take 60 years for the paint to dry. Yeah, you should see some of my other works. Oh, that's actually...
What you need to do is to work that into the blue, right? Yeah, that's right. see that right there is the main
You need some more weight?
No, it's okay. Just, there you go. Okay.
Sir, let me wipe this.
Yeah, you should maybe work that in a bit, huh? There were a few clouds there that day, so I think they're a bit higher though.
That's for you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Actually, could I place for a picture with you?
Well, I'd like to invite General Beard to
Absolutely, sir.
make a few words, actually.
Folks, this is a little unexpected for me.
Maybe put this over there for now.
In 2002, it was my honor to be commanding a brigade of troops out west, which included 3 PPCLI battle group commanded by Col Pat Stogran at the time, and send them off to Afghanistan. I didn't think I'd be this many years later reconnecting with the 3 PPCLI family in a post-op Apollo era, hanging out with a Canadian astronaut, watching a flag that has been taken to space come back to the troops that were actually deployed on that mission. So this is actually a pretty great day. But I'd just like to put the this kind of Canadian personal engagement, Canadian public engagement, and Canadian institutional support to Canada's military in a bit of context. If you could put yourself back to about September, say, 8th of 2001, and ask yourself what you were thinking about Canada's place in the world, what mattered in the world, and whether or not Canada really was conscious that it might need a military to defend Canadians or their interests globally, locally, continentally, and whether or not they'd ever find themselves halfway around the planet in some landlocked country that most of Canadians had never really thought of before. So pre 9/11, there was really not a lot of Canadian consciousness about, the world and Canada's place in that world and what Canada might want in terms of a military to defend Canada and Canadian interests in that world. But so after 9/11, if you didn't think you needed a military or might want one before 9/11, afterwards, probably most Canadians said, hey, we probably need one. But April 15th, 2002, we've got 1,000 of Canada's finest in southern Afghanistan. And up to that point, most Canadians probably didn't know they had a military. But on April 17th, every Canadian knew they had a military. And with the four fallen, with Ainsworth Dyer, Ricky Green, Nathan Smith, and Marc Leger, with their passing and the repatriation of their wounded under Sergeant Ford and the gang coming home, every Canadian knew they actually had a military who was there to defend them in this new world within which we're living. And not only did they know they had one, they learned to take a personal stake in the care and nurturing of that military and in the visible demonstration of support both as people, as Canadians in the street, yellow ribbons on the roads and highways of heroes, and in institutions like the Space Agency and others saying, what can we do to support and enable our military, who is actually here to take care of Canada and Canadians in this modern world within which we live. So this is another demonstration of our consciousness of our need for professional military force, the fact that we know we have one and that we're going to exercise stewardship and ownership of that force, and as individual citizens and as organizations that represent other Canadian national interests, like the Space Agency does, we're going to recognize that military and we're going to continue to support it. So I'm absolutely thrilled to see that my new battle buddy, Dr. MacLean, a Canadian hero and a Canadian astronaut, has personally invested in that demonstration of support to Canada's military, and in particular to the folks that charted a new era for the Canadian military in southern Afghanistan in the form of the 3 PPCLI team under then Col Pat Stogran, who could probably use a haircut, and those who have followed behind him. And with that, Dr. MacLean, my thanks to you and for everything you're doing.
Thank you. I would like to do two things before I show what I flew in this frame of what we did in space with the flag. Where is the flag right now? Is it? It's in this box? Okay. It seems too small. It's very well folded then, huh? Okay, is it okay if I open it? If I unfold it? And could I ask the representative from Patricia? You'll see it's been folded very well here, so there's probably our formality to do that. Yeah. While we're unfolding it, I'm allowed to take two what they're called flight data file into the shuttle itself. We do take a number of small Canadian flags and small provincial flags, but they're in the hold of the shuttle. I'm only allowed to take two inside the shuttle. So the two items I took, one was on behalf of my wife and family, and the second was this flag. So it was very important for me to take this flag, but we're just going to unfold it and show all the signatures that are on both sides. And then maybe we can just lay it down here. Oh, did you get the picture that you needed? Okay. And then this.
Wow.
This is how it, oh, we don't actually see the whole picture. I'm going to get you the full picture of this, okay? Anyways, this is a montage that includes the flag, and it's this picture that I wanted to show you. And what's missing in this picture is I'm here in front of the flag. We're actually in the airlock, just where we go outside for our EVA, or our spacewalk, so it's just inside that area. But this picture is great because I'm floating in this direction, but Chris Ferguson, the pilot of the space shuttle on that mission, you can see his head there and his shoulder there. He's upside down holding the other side of the flag.
Well, it was just, I didn't know it. Before I sent the flag, I pricked my finger and I bled right on the rope, just so I could say, there's a piece of me zipping around the Earth at, 17,500 miles an hour, 186 orbits, right? And I thought it was just in the cargo hold, but I was just like, wow, there's a part of me in that picture, and the flag is there, and it was just like, I thought, just because of the complex nature of the way the whole shuttle missions work and everything, I was just like, okay, I understand. Well, just put it in the cargo hold as long as it can fly for the boys, right? That's all that matters, is just make sure you fly it for the boys and for the men and women who serve Canada. But when I actually saw that he actually flew it, it was just, I honestly felt like I was going to cry, because it was just like, oh, you are just so beautiful. Thank you.
So I wanted to give you a comparison of you and I holding the flag here. But when this was shrunk, actually, when I guess to make it into the montage. But the montage, this is what the station looked like after we left. Each picture is from, there are the diamond shocks that should be in your painting, okay? This is a picture of the shuttle while we do the flip, just before we arrived at the station. And this is one of my favorite shots. There's a whole series as we go over the Mediterranean. And the reason I like this shot is I'm right there on the outside. If you're over 40, you probably need glasses to see me. And of course, this is during the EVA itself. So the station, Marc Garneau brought up this solar panel here. Basically, our crew brought up this solar panel. And just on the mission that's there now, the fourth one is there. So the station is fully outfitted with its power. And so it's a pretty exciting time. Anyways, I would like the Patricia Regiment to have this, and we can probably get a copy for you as well, Joe.
I'm sure that there's definitely a spot that we'll find for this. This is very, very cool. I don't know any other way to put it, really.
Yeah, and Joe,
really
Joe mentioned the time. I typically say 12 days or 13 days or something like that. But this has gone 7.84 million kilometers during the 13 days that we were on orbit. And we did 187 orbits of the Earth. We do 90, every 90 minutes we do one orbit, so we get 16 sunrises and 16 sunsets. So this flag actually saw 186 sunrises and 186 sunsets over the course of the mission.
So half the time of the troops over there.
Yeah. So anyways, I'm very pleased to give this to you. It was, we have, our entire crew was Navy on board the shuttle. I was the only civilian. And I had Navy background because I come from a shipbuilding village in Nova Scotia. So I got away with being Navy while I was there. But it was a very touching moment when Chris and I held this flag in the because we all, you know, some of them have seen action, and we all know what it takes. The risk that it takes, the sacrifice of the families, we all know what it takes to support our country's army. So, okay, well, thank you.
On behalf of the 3rd Battalion and all the troops overseas, I thank you very much,
Okay.
and it's very touching, and we'll definitely find a spot for this. This is very, very, very excellent. Thank you.
Okay, good. And I guess that concludes what we were trying to do here. This is, you know, you and I started in our new positions on the very same day pretty well, within the same week, I believe.
Yeah.
And it's very important to me, the relationship with our armed forces, and I'm going to pursue that over the course of my mandate, to work very closely with D&D so that we make space an essential element of our government's infrastructure. This is my main goal. And, but it gave me great pleasure to support you, 2.5 years ago now, in a way that is much, much more personal. Okay, thank you. Okay. Very good.
Can I have a group photo with you?
Yeah, sure. In fact, I would like a photo with everyone that's from Patricia, just to make sure, and the Colonel as well.
Great. Yeah, we'll get a shot.
You were the Colonel at the time?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
Go, boys.
Stu, you should be here too.
I don't know if you want this and then one without, maybe, I think.
Yeah.
Beside the short guy.
You can.
Not first, I figured out all by myself.
I wasn't aware that you took the actual
flag
flag in the shuttle, and seeing that was just very, very lovely, sir. Thank you. So I thought the flag was actually going to end up here. I was actually prepared to frame it up and then ship it back here, but the Patricias took it, and it's going to get displayed now forever in their battalion headquarters, and right on. I'm happy. And so they can maybe display it beside my book there, and long after I'm dead, in a blink of an eye from now, I won't be here. It'll be 100 years in the future, 200 years in the future, but that flag will still be there. People who have a dream and a passion and a vision need to follow it, because there's other like-minded people who are in that same sort of mindset. And it's so critical. It's so critical that they do, because it's a testament, and the whole system, the way humanity is kind of, you know, the human systems are kind of rigged. They're running against people with passion and creativity and entrepreneurial spirit. And if you show dedication and steadfast commitment, you're going to meet other like-minded people along the way who happen to have, like yourself, you know, this guy's mover and shaker, you know, bring to bear their kind of resources to help manifest these dreams and visions into reality. And then eventually, once you get there, like it is right here, like, you know, here I am, I'm at the Canadian Space Agency, oh my God, like, that's a testament right there to, you know, when you have a dream and you're willing to sacrifice, and sacrifice hard, you can get there. And I'm sure Dr. MacLean, when he was a young man, you know, he had an idea to be an astronaut, and I'm sure a lot of people were just like, oh, well, you know, whatever. Okay, well, now he's running the Canadian Space Agency, right? And it's all about perseverance and having that commitment to, you know, see things through to the end. And that's the most important lesson, is perseverance. When Obama got nominated, he was in the skybox with Steven Spielberg, okay? Mover and shaker, this guy. If you think I'm kidding, you just watch what he does. This guy, it's, when history is written the books on us, we're going to be, you know, doing some very, we're going to be doing some very creative, very amazing things, and it's an honor to know this man.
I want to say congratulations.
Thank you,
on
my
the
friend.
project. It's meant a great deal.
Thank you.
Best of luck.
That was good. In Afghanistan, I personally speaking, and I have to be careful to stay within my lanes, I'm not a politician, and ultimately as a professional soldier, you know, we do what our political leadership tell us to do. That being said, I think that it's, you know, I think there's an important job to do there, and I think that we, you know, we collectively, the Western world, if you will, need to be there as long as it takes to get the job done. Now, you know, the tough question is whether or not that means that Canadians need to stay there, because Canadians have paid their dues. We've been there since '02. We were the first in with the Americans, and we have a much smaller army, and we've had our bumps and bruises, and it's been a tough slog. So that's certainly not my decision to make, but I do believe in the mission there. I do believe in the cause, and it will take a while. So we'll have to be very determined and think long-term collectively in terms of making sure that we succeed in that mission. You know, the consequences are hopefully collectively, and I think the assumption is certainly from the Canadian perspective that as a coalition, you know, the work will continue to get done. So if our political leadership is satisfied with that, then that's terrific, and I think that would certainly mitigate the circumstances per se of the Canadian contingent pulling out. But I think if collectively, as a coalition, as a Western, as NATO, for example, were to pull out, I think it would be an unmitigated disaster. You know, I think that we're at the tipping point now, and you need to ensure that all of those, all the conditions are in place for you to move out. It can't be driven by strict timelines. There need to be some very sophisticated criteria in terms of governance and whatnot, and infrastructure and whatever else in place before you pull out. So it's very difficult to be too linear about it, I suppose, committed to a set timeline. Perhaps we as a country can do that in the context of the coalition, but it's going to a simple gesture. I think it goes well beyond that. This is very significant for the battalion. I think I speak certainly on behalf of the battalion, but I probably speak on behalf with a fair degree of confidence of all members of the Canadian Forces. You know, what I was saying here earlier is that I think your gesture in the start date effectively in April of '02, I think really kind of symbolized a critical turning point for the nation in terms of its collective consciousness of what its military does on its behalf. And so that outpouring of grief and support that that we witnessed here in Edmonton and we witnessed from overseas, it meant a great deal to us because for a bunch of us who had been serving for years and years beforehand, we'd never seen it, frankly. It was indifference at best, right?
Yes, sir.
In some cases, we were almost an annoyance. Why are my taxes going to the Army? Well, certainly there are better things for us to be spending money on. And I think it's a reality of when you live in such comfortable environs that you can become very insular and you take things for granted. Clearly, things have changed, and I think part of that, frankly, I actually attribute to you. I mean, that act, that selfless act of patriotism and devotion and generosity and love and whatever you want to call it, I think it sort of spawned a sort of national kind of awakening, right? And it was tremendously important for all of us, and it had a huge impact on the guys who were overseas. I mean, we would read it, and we were tracking it very closely. And certainly, when we saw that outpouring in Edmonton here, it really it meant a great deal to us, and I think it helped with the boys as they grieved and as they tried to heal. It helped to know that people cared, so it's a big deal. So you are here today, my friend, because we want to publicly acknowledge the work that you've done, what you've done on behalf of all of us.
Well, thank you, sir.
And so we thought, despite how busy we are and everything else we've got going on, it was important for us to take the time to acknowledge you in front of all the troops. We've got a bunch of new guys here who frankly have never even heard of you. Because they weren't here. In fact, many of them were probably in grade school, too. We were a very young battalion. I've got a bunch of 19-year-olds you'll see out on parade there. And this was the last, at least, of the concerns 7 years ago. But it's important that they know who you are. And it's important that they understand what you've done for us and that just to raise their own awareness, if you will. So I'm very happy that you're here. And I'm happy that we're able to do this. I think it's the least that we can do. I think you've been very gracious in terms of allowing us to hang the flag in our lines and to
it belongs here. It
that's
truly
great.
belongs here. So.
That's great. So with that, we will be parading at 1 o'clock. The entire battalion will be out there. We will. We got a couple things we need to do before we get into the unveiling of the flag. Namely, we've got a couple of promotions, and I always like to do that kind of business in front of a bit of an audience and have some friends of the battalion here. It's a great thing for us to be able to share with all of you. So we'll do that, and then we will proceed and carry on with the unveiling.
Okay.
Sadly, we're a little bit constrained in terms of time because we have courses going on for guys deploying overseas and everything else, right? So, you know, we'll just do our business and then allow the guys to carry on with their very important business. But we're very grateful that you all took the time to be here. And I know, you know, this is the next door for you, Joe, so we appreciate that.
Well, thank you.
Right. Sam, anything else you want to say?
I'd like to thank everybody for coming and attendance also. It's taking time out of their schedules, and we appreciate it.
And what I'd like to do is actually give you guys this. We could do it here, or we can do it in front of the whole battalion, but, you know, as thanks. And first of all, to my friend Major Mark Campbell. It's so
Hey, Joe. How you doing, buddy? Good to see you. Looking good?
You look good. You look awesome. He's like one of my very dear lifelong friends. And if I knew you were going to be here, I thought you were in the States, I would have prepared one of these for you.
Don't worry, buddy.
But this is a little something, one for each of you. Over here is actually space rope that was attached to the international, well, to the flag. And if you notice, here is actually, I have some for you. At least I can do this. But I have actually cut off a section and I decoupled it.
Right.
And so you both have one half of the same rope, so you are kind of officially connected. And now there's some information about the mission badge. So I have some for you, and I have some pictures. So I don't know what your framing is, so I'll leave that up to you. But
that's wonderful. Thanks, Joe.
My pleasure.
Great, buddy. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
If we could, we got our Charlie Moe pick there, so if we get Mr. Green between us there, sir?
Yeah, that'd be great. It's good. We've got a few of these here today, clearly. But
Interesting tidbit. It was just in the news recently. The regiment, Patricia Canadian Light Infantry, has just made Don Cherry an honorary Patricia. And so that's the only reason I know this tidbit of information, but apparently there are only 15 honorary Patricias, and Joseph is one of them.
Really?
She's right up there with Don Cherry. Scary movie.
Yeah, you're gonna need a new sports jacket. So
Higher collars,
new collars, right?
One of the things that I can certainly attest to is when it became evident to me that I was an honorary Patricia, it has infused itself, its character and essence into all that I do, where I have my own set of like personal ethical standards when it comes to absolutely everything I do, especially when I paint. Painting is become like a new thing that I've discovered within myself. Yeah, and on this, like, this is my symbol that I have like embroidered into my painting jacket. It's my own sort of uniform, right? And it's a fusion between, you know, the shuttle mission and the Patricias and the government of Canada. And, you know, Canada is like my religion, and it's my faith. And, you know, the Patricias are kind of like the church in some regards. So, knowing that I'm an honorary member of this incredibly prestigious, the best battalion in the finest regiment in Canada is something that I'm speechless. And I have a painting I'd like to present in front of everyone, and with your permission, I have some soil that my friend Major Campbell gave me from Afghanistan. I'd like to mix it in with the paint and give you the final brushstroke. So you and Dr. MacLean will be kind of artistically connected. And also, I want to present it on behalf of the Canadian arts community as my own sense of symbolism of standing against the tyranny of the Taliban for their well-known track record of the cultural annihilation of Afghanistan, and especially with the destruction of the 1,000-year-old Buddhas. For me, as a painter and as an artist, to stand against that, you know, beside you know, the CEO of the Patricias would be nothing short of a lifelong honor.
That's terrific.
So, and I also have the very first book with all the signatures and all the letters from all the ministers and senators and everything here. That this book belongs with the flag and the painting, and then that'll be that.
That's terrific.
Sorry, if you excuse me, I'm going to go and do my stick.
Good.
Nice to meet you
It's
folks.
ready for the
I'll be out there. I'll be the big guy yelling.
Okay, Arson.
Excuse me.
Great.
Sir.
Great. Arson. So in terms of the mechanics of that, did you want to do that here now, or?
I'd like to do it in front of the soldiers, if
Okay.
that's all right. It's your call, sir.
I guess the time concern is mine, in that I've got them for a very short period. So is that a very long sort of affair?
No, we could just
bang. Yeah, if we can do that, that would be great.
Yeah.
Not to diminish the.
No worries.
It's just that,
Get her done.
Yeah, I got some angry instructors on a Friday afternoon, sort of.
I understand.
"Boss, we need the troops." So, okay, so if we can get that, that would be great. I'd be honored.
All right. So should we just take it out there?
I guess however we want to do that.
I'll take.
You got it? Okay. Great.
And I also have a flag of the Patricias that I'd like draped over it.
By all means, let's do that.
All right.
Great.
So, should I take it out, or?
Those two gentlemen there, sir, will
Okay.
give you a hand.
And I have an easel that can be extended with the legs.
You want this white sheet off?
Yeah, no. Let's leave it on. We'll unveil it in front of the soldiers. And make sure this flag doesn't touch the ground.
Rob, can I give you this too?
No problem, sir. Discussing strategies.
And yeah, you could just unclip it from there.
You
and
can
then-
carry it out. So it's-
Yeah, that's fine. All right. So, wonderful. I'm excited. Thank you, gentlemen.
So were there any other instructions, I guess, for our friends here?
It's just to go through some, yeah, I'll do the big Adam thing, because first,
Sure.
as much as the colonel likes to run his time, I have to make sure he stays on time, so, long and short, but I'll be staying with you while you're here today. When we go out to the parade, the battalion will be already formed up, and what we'll do is we're just gonna stand off to the right-hand side of the parade, looking kind of down while the guys do their thing, and the colonel will do his presentations and the promotion, and at which time we will then move together down to where the unveiling site is, Joe.
Okay.
So get you front and center, and then the colonel will then carry on with the unveiling ceremony with you definitely.
Thank you.
And that will be basically it. Because the battalion, because it's like typical parade, you're a big tall guy, voice kind of travels a bit, but to make sure everybody hears it, you gotta pull them all in. So we gotta get in there before they get pulled in, or else we'll have to be like fighting our way in, and we don't need to do that. Okay.
All right.
Good to go, sir.
Great. All right, let's.
Buddy.
Good to see you.
So good to see you. Stand. I don't know if you had a chance to see your painting or not.
Yes, I did. It's here. I've donated it to the 3rd Battalion. I was going to tell you today.
Oh, okay.
I'm in the middle of building a new home. I just don't have. It's a big painting, Joseph. It's a lot of paint.
You're a good friend.
Yeah, but I donated to the 3rd Battalion here, so it's upstairs in the operations office, and they're going to find a suitable place to hang it. And I thought that was most appropriate. I mean, if I, as much as I appreciate the gesture, I mean, it's a love thing between us, I'm afraid, and I certainly appreciate the gesture, but I just don't have the physical space.
I understand.
No better place than
So yep, Patricia's on 10, 2! Battalion, standards, please! Attention! Officers, fall in! Battalion, attention! Sir. Patricia's stand down, ace. Stand easy.
PCL, we bring in our friends, please.
We can move down. Okay. Mark, why don't you come down? Just stay on.
Should the whole family be coming?
Hmm?
Is the whole family supposed to follow?
Yeah, I think, is the whole family coming?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, sorry. I'm just going to hang on the side.
Okay.
Sorry, sir.
All right, let's bring it in on the sides there, please, folks. Hollow square. Can we hear me all right in the back there, guys? Good to go? All right. Before we proceed with some of the other formal presentations, there are a couple things that I would like to do with all of us here today. It's always great to be able to promote some of our folks. So with that, let's start with getting Master Corporal Black up here. Sir! You got it. Sergeant Murray. Sir. Yeah. There you go. Nice. Great to see you. Folks, as most of you probably know, every year we send in nominations to act as sentries on the National Cenotaph, on the National War Memorial for the Remembrance Day in Ottawa. There are 4 vets there, only 1 for the Army. This year, I'm happy to announce that because of the outstanding soldiering that he has done in his career, and the way that he's contributed to the Army, to the staff, to his country, Corporal Jacobs is being recognized and is being bestowed the honor I'm acting as the Army Sentry on the National Cenotaph on Remembrance Day, so I just wanted to publicly acknowledge this in front of the battalion, in front of our friends. This is a big deal. We're very proud for him, proud of him, and I know he'll do us proud. Great job, my friend. Thanks. To the meat of it. There's a reason why we called this parade today. We could have done the promotions earlier this morning. A little bit of background. I know how young our battalion is. There are a bunch of guys who weren't here in 02. In 02, as you know, deployed in Afghanistan, in Kandahar. We ran into tough times. We lost 4 of our brothers at Tarmac Farms. And to put it into context, for those of you who weren't around at the time, it was the first time that in many, many years, arguably since Korea, that there had been a significant loss of life on operations. And we were a country at war, and this was very new to Canadians. And I think, frankly, the Canadians didn't know how to respond. They didn't really know what was going on. But we had a certain gentleman by the name of Joe Green. Joe, stand up here. Joe Green, a random civic, who had been tracking our business overseas, was very moved by the incident, and I guess out of sheer patriotism, a sense of duty, love of country, call it what you will, he decided that it would be appropriate to put together a book of condolence, and he went to great lengths. This is a guy with a fine arts background. He's an artist by profession from various medium. He does painting and movies and whatnot, and graphic design. And he ended up getting a bunch of very prominent, distinguished Canadians to sign his books and send letters of condolence. He collected these, and then he presented them to the battalion. It was an amazing thing. And as I was telling Joe before we marched out here on parade, I think in my mind anyway, I think it symbolized an important turning point for the country. Right? Up until that point, for the older guys out there, I think you'll agree, there was probably a certain amount of indifference when it came to what we did on a day-to-day basis. Certainly, we hadn't experienced that kind of outpouring when we were in the office. Right along, it was just a fact of life. Joe's selfless and very generous act, I think, in my mind, marked that turning point for the nation. And we certainly saw the outpouring of grief and support and love from the greater community for his soldiers when we I guess, mourned the loss of our 4 soldiers on Tarmac Farms. And that was we saw that, of course, at Red Salt Place. The amazing outpouring of grief and support there. We are here today to recognize Joe Green's contribution. I think he's a great Canadian. I think that I wish and I hope that most Canadians will look to Joe as a model of citizenship, frankly. It was a tremendous act on his part. Now, if that weren't enough, we took it one step further. In order to thank him for his efforts, and I think Major Mark Campbell, as most of you know here, was one of the lead men on this initiative. We gave him an autographed camp flag. So a bunch of the boys over in Kandahar signed the flag, including the CO at the time, Col Pat Stogran, and we fired off to Joe, thanking him for his efforts. So Joe, being the selfless, slightly crazy patriot that he is, said, I've got an idea. I will have this flag float in space. For those of you who don't know, at the time, Dr. MacLean, a prominent sort of Canadian scientist, was scheduled to embark on a flight with NASA on the space shuttle. And somehow he managed to convince Dr. MacLean to take the flag up with him into space. I was fortunate enough to head back to St. Barrett, the National Space Agency, with Sergeant Ford and the RSM, and of course it was particularly poignant, I think, and appropriate for Sergeant Ford to be there to accept the flag on behalf of the battalion. But Joe Green was, again, generous enough to allow us to take back, as it was presented by Dr. MacLean. And we did that in early spring, and it was a wonderful ceremony. Well, the flag is here, folks, and with our friend Joe Green, we figured it was the least we could do to invite him down, to show him the unveiling of the flag, to see that it will hang in perpetuity in 39 lines, that all members of the battalion will be able to admire it and to remind themselves of how much the great country supports its troops, and how fortunate we are to have citizens like Joe Green running around in our defense, and reminding people what it is that we do for the living and sacrifices that we sustain. So, Joe, again, on behalf of the battalion, I want to thank you very much. I understand there's something that we need to do before we unveil the flag. Shall we proceed with that? No, wait. Was he thinking? I don't know where. Just for the. Joel, I'll hand the floor to you. Go ahead, my friend.
All right. My beloved Patricias. There's no words to describe what a prestigious honor it has been to be involved with the finest battalion and the finest regiment in Canada. Your sacrifices on a day-to-day basis will never go unnoticed by people like me and by all students. When I started this, I never thought for a moment I would end up presiding over such a prestigious event. I spent, when I started this 7 years ago, I set up an online book of condolence, and I sent it to every Liberal MP in Canada because they were the party at the time. This is, for me, a Canadian issue. It's not a political issue. I wanted to let you know that I got a letter from Michael Nadia congratulating the Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry on this event. But I also wanted to take this moment to thank various members of Canadian government, including Stephen Harper and Peter McKay, who graciously provided me with a letter of remembrance to this. I spent 2.5 years in this book, full-time, 60, 70 hours a week, running at an operational loss to do this, because I strongly believe in all of you, each and every one of you. I went into a publication cycle, and when I had the honor of unveiling this book for the first time, Colonel Ed was there, along with my beautiful friend Jocelyn Van Sloten. And I publicly swore out renouncing all rights to profit from this. With what books I was able to sell, I donated, based on the recommendations of Col Pat Stogran, all the profits to a nonprofit that promotes women's rights and literacy out in Afghanistan. Because from my observation, from my perspective, it's education that is something that's so needed out there to help stabilize the region. Now, for me, this book is as sacred as this flag is to me, because it has my blood, sweat, and tears. Now, I'm going to share something with you that is incredibly personal to me, and I'm being absolutely honest. I went through a very, very, very bad breakup where it threw me into such a depression that there was not an hour, not a day, not a week that went by where I didn't want to end my life, kill myself. And what saved me was my commitment to you people. You were the ones who saved me. And I gave my word, if it wasn't for the Patricias, I wouldn't be here. And, I didn't sell very many books. I tried, but I didn't. For me, this book needs to be here and reside here. And it has all the original letters, all the original correspondence, all the signatures from the families. And, I consider each and every one of you in here today like a brother or a sister. and I hope I can be regarded as that, even though I haven't met one. So with that, I'd like to present the original cop, the austere in perpetuity. Well, now, I have one last thing. I'm an artist, I'm a painter. And in Afghanistan, the Taliban stand for the destruction and the annihilation, in my opinion, of their culture. And it, you know, as an artist, for me, what I would like to do by unveiling this painting and giving the opportunity with your commanding officers, my prestigious honor, I would like to have him paint the final brushstroke on behalf of the Canadian arts community. Because we're there with you in spirit. And for me, this is a symbolic act of defiance against the Taliban and for what they have done to culturally annihilate the people and the history of Afghanistan, beginning with the destruction of those 1,000-year-old Buddhas. For me, this is essentially that. You know, let's do it. Get her done. All right, now, I want to share one quick story. I know you guys got to go. This painting is called Faster Than Angels. There's a reason why it's called Faster Than Angels. When I was at the 99% mark of finishing the book, I was cycling, like the book was all ready to go, all in pre-press, all in digital form, and I was cycling right near the U of A. When I was cycling, I'm pretty hardcore, eh? Like I thunder in, I'm just like Mr. Insane. Well, anyway, what happened was I collided with the skateboarder, and as it was a bone-jarring crunch, I was thrown into traffic. The skateboarder landed on the lawn. I was thrown in the air. My bike did a 270-degree arc. As it landed, you know, I could hear my bike collide with the car. And as I landed, and Baron, like you guys have all been like PT exercise, you know how fast this stuff happens, right? Anyway, I land and my head is my face is about a foot or 2 feet away from the treads of the oncoming car. And you know, it's happening so fast, but your body can't physically react fast enough. And what happened was at that moment, I felt someone grabbed me by my scruff of the neck and yanked me up. And the reason I remember that is because of the physics of interaction with my spine, where I could feel my head snap, and it pulled me up, and a half a second later I could see the passenger rear quarter panel sit by my head. Now, needless to say, I couldn't walk for 3 days. And I wanted to let you know that over the 2.5 years that I spent working on this book, I could feel the presence of those soldiers encouraging me on, and I'm not kidding. I could feel their presence to the point where it was almost nauseating how intense it was. And at that moment, I need you all to understand that it was a Patricia who literally came back and saved my life. And I wanted you all to know that because it's important. So with that said, let's unveil Faster Than Angels. Sir, I give you. Now let me get the paint.
I failed finger painting 101. Can you clear?
No worries. Can you hold it, sir? Yeah. This is soil from Afghanistan.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that is actually taken from Operation Cherokee Sky. And it was inspired by a photograph by, I believe, Master Corporal Brian Walsh.
Great job.
And I wanted to go with a diffused color palette. And I hope the gentlemen like it. Now, let me have sure. You can rip that open. Sure. Put that in there. Don't forget it.
All right. What do you want to do?
Just pour it in. Yeah. And this is soil that Major Mark Campbell gave me when I first got my flag. What I originally wanted to do was actually house it in with the flag and have the tip of the rope actually touch this soil, so it would always be symbolically flying on Afghan soil. Before I sent that flag away, I pricked my finger and I bled on the very tip of the rope, so I could say there was a little piece of me that zipped around this planet at 28,000 kilometers an hour and circled the Earth 187 times. Now, as some of you soldiers, you know, I can't really speak for what exactly it's like to be a soldier when, you know, how nervous, you know, some of you guys can get. But if you ever need any luck, and I mean this, like if you're scared and you're going overseas and you're worried, just come and touch the flag. It'll give you 187 days of luck. Okay. So, with that said, sir, I think we're ready to go.
Where are you thinking? Sir, this is a beautiful piece. I really don't want to.
I'm thinking right here.
Right around here?
Right around there?
Let's do it.
I'd actually like to give the RSM and Major Mark Campbell. I'd like to have you paint the stroke as well, sir.
Well, I can't do any worse.
For me, this is like a symbolic act of, you know, to the Taliban. Like, you know, honestly, it's just like, you know, fuck you, Taliban.
See if I can. And blend this in a little bit. That's. Thanks, John.
You're welcome, sir. I like that piece.
I really.
Thank you, sir. May it serve this battalion with honor and integrity.
Thank you.
Get rid of this.
All right.
Now, so let me just clean this up. What? Very well, sir, I present this to you.
Thank you. All right, let's proceed with the. Let's proceed with the unveiling of the flag. Go ahead there, gents. There we go. Wow. Outstanding. And with the other piece.
Wow.
What we've got here, of course, is the flag. These pictures are provided by Dr. MacLean, then a bit of a narrative here, Joe, explaining, providing the context and actually explaining in very clear detail, you know, what it was that you did for our battalion. It's beautiful. Significant context of what you provided for us. So. Yeah. All right. So, folks, again, I think it's important that we take a second here. We reflect on the tremendous act of patriotism and generosity by Joe Green. We also stop for a second to think about the context that brought this about. There are 4 brothers that we lost on that fateful day in April of '02, and I know we've got one of the family represented here as well. And it was a tough time. We've had many tough times since then, but this kind of business, these kinds of acts of generosity and love and patriotism will help us through it and remind us why we do what we do, right? So on behalf of all of the Army, frankly, all CF members serving overseas, let's give this guy a warm round of applause. right, folks, this concludes our the proceedings here today. RSM, over to you, please. Company commanders, carry on.
Do you see where you got the help on this?
Right? No, I almost forgot. That's right. What have we? Joe, this is a very small token, but it's. I think it's important nonetheless. You can add this to your wall, I suppose, of memorabilia, Patricia memorabilia. But we just want to thank you again for everything that you've done, and on behalf specifically of these guys at 3rd Battalion, for again reminding us of the love that we enjoy from our fellow citizens.
Thanks, sir. It's finally over.
Great. All right, buddy.
Thanks,
Cheers.
buddy.
Okay.
Thanks.
Carry on. Majors, carry on.
Well done.
It's over.
That was brilliant. Yeah.
It's,
very well done. Very, very well done.
I
Good
appreciate
speech.
it. Thank you.
Great touch. Really great touch.
Thank you. Yeah. It's over. It's, I really shouldn't touch this. I got paint all over my fingers. Dad, can you hold that? It's
Yeah. Wrong time.
I held the line.
You
It's
did?
done.
Good for you.
Yeah, it's come look at my flag. I'm probably not gonna come back and see it again. But
This is yours too, right?
yeah, that's mine.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. It's my pleasure. It's my honor, and
Thank you very much.
my pleasure, sir. Keep up the fabulous work. It's been my honor to be involved.
Well, you know what? Orange Schultz. JPSU keeps calling now. Those two guys that are running the show.
Signatures on there. I like that.
It is.
And then just little comments with it. It's
Well, the interesting thing is some of the names you see on there aren't with us anymore.
right. And that's what I'm looking at.
Perry.
Yeah.
You know, obviously he's put a lot of thought into that, you know. And if you look at it, sometimes you see paintings and they don't make sense. But this one grabs you right away.
No.
Interestingly enough, there's some signatures on here of guys who absolutely. Private Heart.
You know, these boys are putting their lives on the line every day. It's just like, you know what? I'm an artist, and this is the least I can do in my own way on behalf of the Canadian arts community. This is certainly up there. You know, the CO, the regimental sergeant major, he's like yeah, he was the one, Major Mark Campbell, the gentleman in the wheelchair, he was the one who actually arranged to get my flag for me. So yeah, he mentioned that story while you were out here. He's such a just gave us a little story. He called you eccentric. I know, but look where it led me. Like,
I love your painting.
thank you. You like it?
Incredible.
I signed it right up there on the helicopter blades.
Oh, there.
Yeah, very discreet.
So you just signed it as Joseph.
Yeah.
Beautiful, thank you.
Thank you. This is kind of like my new style. From an artistic perspective, what you see on the bottom kind of looks like what my first masterpiece.
Like the one you did with Colonel Culver.
A little bit, yeah. But the bottom half is where my next kind of evolution is. You know, my whole family and friends came out, and you know, like I'm here with the finest battalion, in the finest regiment, in the finest military in the world. We have the best military in the world. It's not the Americans, you know, it's not the Israelis, it's not the Aussies, it's not the Brits, it's the Canadians. And I firmly believe that. And you know, that's like I said, Canada is my religion, and the forces are kind of like my church in some regards.
I can't believe you sent us into space.
Tell me a bit about your relationship
with Joe. Wow, I've known Joe for many years now. I met him. He lived next door to a coworker of mine, and.
Everybody, fuck it. We're gonna get drunk. We're gonna stone airs tonight, and I plan on getting drunk as fuck tonight. Drunk as fuck.
Terry, I'm your friend, and I'm not just your friend. I'm also your buddy. Thanks, guy.
Met that way, then he ended up being a coworker of mine eventually after that, and we just kind of hit it off. We've been friends ever since, close friends, and we help each other through the rough patches when needed. He actually had some issues with the book. He wanted to quit, but he called me and told me he was going to quit the book, but I didn't let him. I just kind of pushed him over.
Let's take a shower.
Because he was so close to finishing. He was almost done. So I don't know what would possess him to stop. So I guess that's what friends do, just give each other the nudges they need. But he finished it. And he did it. I got a copy of his book and it's sitting on my bookshelf at home. It's pretty amazing. He kind of went with it and just went full force. That's kind of what he does though. Nothing's half-assed with Joe. It's all or none. He never stops. Kind of like the PPCLI. I guess the Canadian Infantry or anybody having to do with the military in Canada. And do what they have to do. Get it done.
Pulling out? I think it'll be difficult. I think for the families of the fallen, I think it'll be very difficult. There's no denying. I think that, and I can't say I speak for all families of the fallen, but I would certainly have the impression that if we were to fail in Afghanistan, certainly amongst the families of the fallen, there would be a great sense of sadness, I think, and perhaps a sense of futility, right, of their own personal losses. Certainly the families of the soldiers, I think, would probably be very relieved. It's been very tough. I've got non-commissioned officers here who've been over 3-4 times overseas fighting the good fight, and it's been very difficult. So undeniably, from a serving soldier's perspective, their families will be quite relieved, I think.
Most flags fly high, but few have flown quite as high as the one in this story. It was taken aboard a space shuttle and launched into orbit as a tribute to 4 Canadian soldiers who lost their lives in the early days of the mission to Afghanistan. Today, the flag arrived home at the military base those men once called their own. Linda Calvert was there.
When the time came, for a moment, Joe Green just couldn't find the words.
Whew, there's no words to describe what a prestigious honor it has been.
It's been a long journey for him, for the 3rd Battalion, Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry, and this flag.
Go ahead there, gents. There we go. Wow. All right. So,
the flag has traveled from Kandahar to outer space, and now will hang here in the battalion's drill hall.
Every day that they come in here, they circulate in here, they go on parade, they can look at that flag, and when they're down and, and they see it.
In April 2002, 4 soldiers from the battalion were killed in so-called friendly fire. Half a world away, the news so moved Green, an artist, he started an online memorial. Within a week, more than 50,000 Canadians has sent their condolences. To thank him, the soldiers in Kandahar signed their flag and sent it to him. And that's when Green got a really far-out idea. Send the flag into orbit. And the Canadian Space Agency agreed to do it.
Yeah, Joseph, send us the flag. We want to show our support. And as soon as I heard that, I was just like,
you know, it's one of those moments, right?
And liftoff.
In 2006, Canadian astronaut Sgt MacLean took the flag with him. Talk about one of those moments. But after all it had been through, Green felt the flag wasn't his any longer. It belonged here.
Today, I think that this flag represented a real milestone for our country in terms of the outpouring of support and collective awareness of what Canada's troops do overseas.
Green honored their sacrifices, and now the battalion is returning that respect, making him an honorary member of the regiment. Linda Calvert, CBC News, Edmonton.
I just, I'd like to take 2 seconds again just to, for the record, to thank Joe Green. I think that he is he's a patriot. He's a wonderful Canadian. He's a great human being, and we are grateful, very grateful, as a battalion, as a regiment, as an army, and probably as an institution, as the Canadian Forces, to have citizens like Joe Green who show their love and support for us. It does a great deal to boost morale and to give us that needed strength when times are tough. So I just wanted that known for the record from me personally on behalf of all of us, that we're very grateful for Joe Green and his actions.